Oh gosh.
Hello, I hear you.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. There was another step.
Yeah.
Still learning this thing. Don't ask me how to. Okay. All right. Here we are. Dennis, I'm going to have you open while I go hit the live on Instagram.
Am I on at this point?
Yes, we're on. We're live.
All righty then, folks. We're
Can you
figuring
hear
out
me?
technology here. And Robin and I are experts in manipulation. In this case, we're being manipulated by the technology. So I'm sorry if we're causing you a little bit of angst, but we're here and we're here for you as we are every week and have been for quite some time. And just by way of introduction, I am Dr. Dennis Becker. And next to me here, you see my good colleague and friend, Robin Golinski. And we are here to help you control the manipulation you seem to be going under or are near or are being a target of. So that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we talk about every time we're here. It's what we wrote in the book. That's what's on all of our podcasts. And that's why we're here to help you. And the idea is to help you as it is happening. So let's talk about it. What are we going to talk about today, Robin? You want to introduce us?
I do. And I'm just letting you know, this is the first time I've got Instagram Live going. So I may have to mute and fix something because we'll see how this goes. I'm excited to talk about Valentine's Day and how Valentine's Day can, well, in general, it's a manipulative holiday made up by Hallmark to force you to buy chocolate, roses, diamonds, and be disappointed, generally speaking.
Talking about manipulation, right? Even by Hallmark.
Yes, we're going to talk about the industry, how the industry has manipulated us through that holiday, and how a manipulator may use that holiday as well. Since it's appropriate, it's coming up here. So Valentine's Day. I'm not sure a lot of people know, Dennis, that it's a made-up holiday.
Yeah. Well, supposedly it's named after Saint Valentine Day or something. This is the rumor I heard when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't remember all that stuff, but the fact is that we know it is used by Hallmark and many other products and services to manipulate you into doing and thinking and saying and going and drinking and adding and buying all sorts of stuff.
Oh my gosh. And it just doesn't it seem to get more intense every year?
Every year. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Well, there was a restaurant down here in Florida, and they have got maybe 2 weeks ago, they started putting pink everything everywhere. And you know that the meals cost twice as much on Valentine's Day, and you have to have a reservation, and they're trying to make it into New Year's.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the whole idea of this making it a holiday, and we could talk about this with a lot of holidays, but it seems to be that Valentine's Day, maybe Christmas, Easter, maybe Halloween, I don't know, but Valentine's Day is certainly a sweet spot for manipulators. Oh my goodness, this is a way for them to manipulate you through a lot of the different tactics that we've talked about in the book. And of course, the obvious one is love bombing. Robin, you want to talk a little bit about that first, so for people who don't know what that is?
Well, love bombing is, I think it's one of the only tactics, and Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong. We have 24 tactics we talk about. I believe it's the only tactic that feels good, feels positive, that doesn't feel icky.
Yeah.
And this is love bombing. It's exactly what it says. They just bombed with love. That means you're worshipped, you're adored, you're cuddled, you're given all the things. It could be, well, there's 5 love languages. Actually, it's a great book. There's 5 love languages that people have, and they're gift giving, verbally telling you I love you, physical affection, quality time, and acts of service. So a good love bomber is probably going to hit all 5 of those.
Yeah. You know what, though? As you're saying that, I'm thinking, you know what? Love bombing, you might not use this term, but you can also experience that in your work life. So they may not.
That's a fact.
Right?
Yeah.
It may not be feeling of affection per se and gifts per se and and physical intimacy per se. No, of course not. But the idea of being complimented and being stroked and being suggested for leadership roles and all of that sort of stuff, that could easily be a form of love bombing in the work setting. The idea, of course, being to help you, make you, cause you to feel so loved, so liked, so admired that they can get you to do almost anything. So
I'm really glad you brought that up, Dennis, because this is also something that probably isn't on people's radar because you don't normally think,
no, no,
well, for example, if you're going through a job interview process and you're with a corporation and it's very professional, you would never imagine that you could be being seduced and lulled into a coercively controlling relationship.
yeah, yeah.
But we know many, many people who've had terrible experiences with coercive control in the office, in their
Mm.
workspace.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you used the word seduce because it tends to have a very sensual kind of a feeling. But seduced means something that they give you something that seems to be perfect to lure you into something. Seduction has several forms as well as love bombing. And seduction in job interviews, in workplaces, can take place. So we don't, I mean, we're talking about love bombing, it's Valentine's Day and all that. We get that. But let's remember that we're also applying these kinds of things to the workspace as well, because you can be seduced and love bombed in a different way, but it's the same impact. And for the same reason, to control
And
you.
yes, for control. This is what we have to remember, right? It's for control. I think the love bombing is the most difficult thing for people to extract themselves from or even keep their head on straight because it if it's done well, and so in other words they've actually maybe focused on something that's your own vulnerability, a vulnerability or insecurity that you have, and they've
Mm.
focused on that, strengthening that. For example, I say something like, "Ugh, I hate my nose," and then they store that away, and then love bombing they might say, "You have the most exquisite nose I've ever seen.
Mm.
It's
There you
cute as
go.
a button.
There you
It's
go.
perfect for you. And it's one thing that, sticks out on you. And I really, really adore it." So they go right for the jugular, right? And you
Those-
as a human being you're
You
going to
would,
have a dopamine response.
he might not say sticks out on you. Maybe that not. Those, yeah, I get the point.
Okay, I need to practice my game. You're right. You're right. Why not? It might not be the best compliment. I
Yeah,
love the way your nose sticks out on you.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
better than having something sticking out of your nose, too.
Yeah, but you know
Um,
something, you made a good point there that it's something that doesn't just happen, just happens to happen in Valentine's Day or a certain period of time of the year. This is something, as Robin said, that you may have dropped some comment or word or thing that you expressed at some other time of year, maybe the beginning of the year, long ago, maybe, but they remember. Manipulators remember. They're very smart. Remember, they know, and they're constantly on the lookout for things that you offer as vulnerabilities. We'll talk about that in just a second, but vulnerabilities. And now put that away and remember that you said it. And remember that you said it. And when there's an opportunity, bam, they will bring it back. And they'll bring it back in this sort of love bombing way, but it's something that you have to be careful about because it exudes your vulnerability. Now, that's an important word. Robin, talk a little bit about vulnerability, would you please?
Well, uh, vulnerability is something that every single human being experiences because there are different times that you're vulnerable. If you get sick, you're vulnerable. If you lose your job, you're vulnerable. If you have a baby, you're vulnerable. If you, break your leg, you're vulnerable. There's
Mm,
always something that comes up in your life. You're in an unknown situation, a new
mhm,
job, an
mm,
unknown. You're
mm,
vulnerable.
mhm,
So that's something that a lot of people don't like that word because they don't know what it likes to feel that way. And oftentimes
mm,
we develop something called armor to protect our vulnerability. But Brene Brown does a lot of work on that. But you can't escape the fact that you're going to be vulnerable. A
mm,
funeral, somebody dies, you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
Manipulator knows when you're most vulnerable, and that is their playground. That is their compost rich soil. That is the fertilest environment they could possibly have.
And
While you're focused on whatever the tragedy is or the setback is or the emotion is, they're calculating and planning.
yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
That's okay.
I just wanted to say that sometimes, as Robin's saying, it's a very specific thing that they know you are vulnerable about. Say the topic of maybe your mother or something, and they know that that's a sticky issue for you. They will use that, okay, because they know that specific thing, and you know it too, okay. But there are those times that you may not know that they do know. For example, at a funeral, they know that at a funeral, almost everybody has a sort of mood, a sensitivity to, desire for,
Well, they're distracted.
of course, it's human. They know that. And that's vulnerability to them too. Not just about your mother, which they know you know, but those times when you may not be suspecting that you're vulnerable. It's what we're cautioning you about.
We're cautioning you, but at the same time, we know that vigilance we're saying that you need to have. It's hard to have when you are down and out or hurting or painful or suffering. This is why ultimately we always say get away, because
Mm.
it doesn't end with them. They don't know how to relate to, connect with other human beings any other way but control. And Dennis, I have a little story.
Mm.
It popped into my head with this Valentine's Day and love bombing. So those of you that have read our book or have listened to us for a while know that I was the target of manipulation when I was young, 22, 23 years old, by an older man, decade older than me. And I remember the first card that he gave me. And it was a blank card. It was a beautiful card, and there was nothing inside of it. And I thought, that's strange. And I flipped it over. And at the very back at the top, he put dot, dot, dot. And I really love the way you look into my eyes. And of course, as a 23-year-old, I was like, oh,
Why?
oh, that's so romantic and creative. I felt like a jolt go through me of just the love bomb.
Mhm.
It's funny now that I'm many years later at 58 looking back on that, and I thought, what about that phrase is a little off there, Dennis?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not I love to look into your beautiful eyes.
Yeah, yeah. It's
No, no, no,
the
no, no.
it's the way you
The
look.
way you
Those
feed me.
those
That's
were
what it's about.
he has identified something in you that he can then use as a tactic to manipulate you. The way you look, and then it could be the way you look at me when I have my hair cut, the way you look at me when I'm driving a new car, anything.
But it's about
He
them.
got, he
So
got,
so if you're young and you're listening to this,
yeah,
I don't want to be the person taking the wind out of your sails and you know, robbing you of your dreams. But it would pay you enormously to be more discerning and take a close look at the way things are being worded, because they do tip their hand early on.
yeah, yeah. It's a good point, Robin. I know we should say this. Maybe we should say this to you folks frequently, but we really are not intending to be doomsday sayers. We're not Debbie Downers here. Wah, wah, wah. We're not
Speak for
trying to be.
yourself.
Really, we know that it's difficult, and we know that these folks are so good at it that you may
Yeah.
not even see it coming. You may not even notice it until it's happening, and then it's too late, of course, until you do what we tell you, because that's what we're about. What you do when it's happening. But the idea is, we're not trying to be nasty about this or say it's always awful. But sometimes
Cautionary.
they mean it. Sometimes they mean the loving things that they say. This is what you
Oh,
have.
wait a minute. Not a manipulator. They don't mean any of it.
You have to know you're dealing with a manipulator.
Right. If you may not know that, right? If they,
Yeah,
but a
yeah,
true, what we define and we call manipulator is that bucket of, and narcissistic personality disorder, sociopath, psychopath, all the things, that people put in there, they cannot relate in the normal way, and
Yeah.
you cannot transform them.
Yeah. That's a good point, Robin. Let's reiterate that too, because you cannot fix them. You
Mm-mm.
might want to, because it feels so good to hear those kinds. I want to keep hearing it. If I just tell him that, if I say this, she won't. No, no.
Well,
Forget
so
that.
that's
You're not going
what
to change
happens with
anything.
that love bombing is you end up chasing that. It's
Yeah.
like your first, and I've never done this, but let's say what I've heard, your first hit of heroin, or your first hit of cocaine, right? And oh, people say it feels so good, but then they keep trying to rehab that experience and they're chasing it all the time, and they can never have that experience again.
Yeah.
That's what the love bombing is like in the beginning of the relationship.
Yeah.
It's the hooks that they
Yeah.
hook you in, whether they're a boss that's hired you or a significant other that's pulled you in. Could be a relative. It could be a lot of different things, but
Yeah.
they pull you in with that, and then you're chasing that feeling from then on out. And it
You-
comes out in dribs and drabs as the relationship progresses. They'll give you a little teaspoon here and a little teaspoon there just to keep you on the hook.
And you've heard us say this before, but it feels so good until it doesn't.
Yeah, it can be
Yeah.
quite shocking when that mask falls off and they flip.
Yeah.
It's literally shocking. It's just the exact opposite of the feeling you have with the love bombing. It's a sinking in the pit of your stomach. It's a terrible, terrible feeling. And usually you're in deep enough that you can't get away easily. And typically, if they've got their sights on you and they're trying to pull you in, they're not going to let you get away that easily. They're going to double, triple down. They've got all kinds of tactics. This is why we never run out of things to talk about in our podcast.
Now, tactics. Let's expand that a little bit, because we mentioned earlier on in today's visit the reference of Hallmark cards and so forth,
Mhm.
how they manipulate your thinking and your desires and your wants and your expectations and so forth. It's not just Hallmark cards, though. Take a look at some of the radio and television commercials. Let's take television because you can see. What do you see when they're advertising jewelry or clothing or
If
something?
he loves you, he'll get you a 1 carat
Yeah,
diamond.
this it happens in so many ways. It's their
Yeah.
effort to say to you, you're not worth it in his or her eyes until you get this kind of behavior. And that kind of behavior means buy one of our things, give them one of these things, take them out to this particular place. It's all a manipulative tactic on a corporate level to get you to buy, to enlist in, to subscribe, or whatever. So this isn't just about love bombing with sensuality and sending cards and all of that. It happens in many, many places in our.
Well, we should talk. You mentioned the word Hallmark, and I've said this is a Hallmark invented holiday, which it is, just to make money, exploit people's emotions and expectations. But Hallmark movies, rom-coms,
Oh,
that is they're the most insidious, ridiculous. And I don't know about you, Dennis, but I've been to a few weddings recently. And I can tell you that they're trying to live that dream. They're absolutely trying to recreate this rom-com. Yeah. I, I know I sound like an old lady and I sound like I'm no fun, but I assure you I'm fun and I've had my fun. But
yeah,
it's when it gets to be the point where you're on the Pinterest, you're on the TikTok, and they're telling you, "Oh, you've got to have this, and oh, you've got to have that," and all it is getting you to buy more stuff with this
yeah,
idea that it will be a fairy tale and
yeah.
you will live happily ever after.
Let me stretch that just a little bit with another approach that's taken that we've now more or less exposed, but maybe not so much. I should say, remember, look at how you still see occasionally the idea of uh, body shaming people who are what used to be called overweight or fat. And they would say you can't have a life without losing 40 pounds, or you'll look better if you wear this kind of a dress, or you eat this diet, you'll do certain things, and that will make your life so much better, and so forth. That's all a form of manipulation. And now I know, don't jump ahead of me. I know it's good thinking. It's an attempt to help people have healthier bodies and so forth. I get that part, and I'm not opposed to any of that. I'm concerned about the ones that are attempting to sell you something.
Well,
Because
that's what I was just going to say.
yeah.
When it's all, you're right. When it ends up with, if you only buy this.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's manipulation. Now, we've talked before on the show about persuasion, and we're not talking about persuasion. The persuasion is something that you can see, observe, and get away from. But manipulation is something that you live with, something that gets inside of you, something that wants you to do what is advertised or requested or suggested. That, to me, that's a little bit nefarious when you get folks like that. And you don't want to give them a choice. You want them to only do it this way, or they can't be perfect. It can't work. That's manipulative as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the other side, we talked about Valentine's Day with the love bombing, but there's the other flip side of that, which is also could be a manipulator could do, is disappoint you, to let you know. So, and this could be further down the road, but you might have all these expectations, and they just let you know that you're not as important to them as you think you are. If you need to be taken down a notch, because a manipulator doesn't want you on the floor all busted up, because then they don't look good. But they also don't want you shining brighter than them. So they kind of like you like that helium balloon from the birthday party on day 3. They want you hovering right there.
Yeah. So, not exactly exhausted, but not exactly. But
yeah, just right there. And they're using all those coercive communication tactics to keep you there. So if you're on the floor and you're just completely falling apart, well, that's going to make them look bad. So they'll pump you up. They'll pump you up. If you're feeling really confident, you're thinking that you're an accomplished human being, and maybe you're proud of yourself, they're going to have to take you down a couple notches.
I recall having a client.
Fun for them. That's Robin, super fun for them.
I recall having a client who was talking about a relationship with his wife and so forth, amongst other things. And we got to the point of, I said, well, what are you going to do about it? He said, well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy her some, she loves lilies. I'm going to buy her some lilies and give her the lilies. I said, oh, that'd be nice. And then he said, yeah, because that'll make her feel like I see her. But I'm not going to include a vase. And she's very distinctive about vases. She wants it in a vase. I'm not going to do that. I said, why not? Right. She's not worth that much. What? He's going to manipulate her feeling by giving her the flower, but not the thing to put it in. That's a very subtle, he knows her. That's a very subtle way to manipulate her feelings, even though it looks like, oh, look, I got you beautiful flowers. But no, that is manipulation as well.
Well, especially when they say something like, well, did they come with a vase? And they say, oh, are you kidding me? As picky as you are, I would never give you a vase.
Yeah.
And then they give and take it away at the same time. It's stunning sometimes how artful they are at that.
Yeah. And this,
listen to how you feel. If you feel icky, this is why we tell you, don't ignore the feeling. It feels like that was weird, that was odd. You need to write it down. Yes. Because you need to see the pattern. Yeah. That's what's going to embolden you to control what you can control, which is, do you want to subject yourself to that?
In the book, we've mentioned many, many times, if you read it, if you haven't, we've mentioned many times this idea of a pattern. Manipulators have a fault in a way, in that they set a pattern of things. They see a pattern of operations, the way you operate, and take advantage of that. But they have a pattern of operating too. Things that they say, things that they do, ways that they approach you. If you have something that's feeling a little uncomfortable, doesn't feel right, and you can't quite put your finger on it, write it in your notes, is what we've said many times. Write it in your notes. Because
only notes that you have hidden away somewhere.
We'll talk about that in a second. Those notes that you have make a journal, which as you look at them over time, you realize, oh my God, this is not the first time. Keep it a journal for yourself. It's very helpful. And write it in your notes. But Robin, say something about secret journal. That stirs something different. Go ahead.
Well, I want to say something about that, and then I actually want to say what we want to talk about next time.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about the side, the hiding the
Because
journal.
now I realize this is what you said was a segue. The journal, yeah, you definitely need to have a journal that cannot be found. They will go through all of your things. They do go through all of your things. They do go through your phone. This is what it's about, control. They control for the sake of control.
Mhm.
So if you think they're not doing that, they are.
Yeah.
They are. And they actually get excited about doing that.
Yeah.
It's super fun for them. But Dennis, you had mentioned seeing the pattern. And what I want to talk about next week, if you're okay with it, is how we don't want to see the pattern. This is the resistance people have.
Yes, yes.
Because then what? Then I
Right.
have to do something about it. And the doing something about it can freak people out. And so you can stay in these relationships for decades and decades. If you've seen Elvis Presley's movie, how he was completely coercively controlled by his manager. Also, the guy from oh my God, Good Vibrations. What's his name? Beach Boys. Brian. Oh gosh, his dad, his father
No,
controlled. What'd you say?
I know who you mean. Go ahead.
I know everybody probably does, but I can't remember the guy's name. But the thing is that it's so, look at every movie and documentary. This is a really common thing, but guess what? It starts with communication. So they start with communicating with you, and then in this insidious, nuanced way, next thing you know, you're not yourself anymore and they're controlling you. And this is what we're here to help you with. And we will never run out of things to talk about because there's so much to it.
It's a good topic for next week. We will talk about patterns and your vulnerability to patterns and recognizing them and how that can really be helpful to you.
And what might be blocking you from taking action and seeing reality, We can, we will talk about that next week. And
Robin, it's sometimes very hard to not just only to see these patterns, but it's sometimes hard to say that this loving card that I got from Hallmark is a manipulative tactic. Now, maybe it isn't. Maybe you're not in a relationship with a manipulator.
A lot of people are in normal, healthy relationships.
Oh, of course.
That's what we're here to talk about.
If you have had any of those suspicious, uncomfortable feelings that we've mentioned, you have that didn't seem quite right. Why did he talk to me that way? She says that. If you've had any of that, write it in your notes. It will become a pattern, and that pattern leads to these more obvious tactics that we've been talking about, like love bombing. This is a place where it could start. So be careful during Valentine's Day. You're listening to us talk about this, but we're coming up on Valentine's Day. Be sure that you recognize that it could be love bombing in a nefarious way. So that's our thoughts.
And next week we'll talk about what's getting in your way.
Yeah.
What is your resistance to maybe seeing the pattern? And what is the benefit to not taking action? So there's a reason a lot of people stay trapped in these relationships. Before I forget, Dennis, because we've done a terrible job at this, we need you guys to rate our podcast.
Yeah.
And we also have a website, Outwit in Real Time. It's been revamped. The new one isn't up yet, but if you subscribed on that one, there's a subscribe button in the beginning and the homepage. We will send you a notification when our training is launched, which we are going to launch on a virtual training in March. So please go to outwitinrealtime.com. And we're at the end, Dennis. Anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say I really enjoy having you as a partner, Robin.
Oh, you're not love bombing me at the end here, are you?
No, see. Oh no, I mean that. Oh no, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me.
I'm too jaded for that.
Perspective. Ay.
Dennis, I adore you.
This is true. I am Dr. Robin Golinski, and we are communication experts who love talking to you about these sort of things. Thanks for being with us, and bye for now.
See you next week.